Who are some of the top goalie prospects in this year's draft? Greg Balloch of EP Rinkside joins us to help go through some of the top names and some of the overagers that could be potentially available for the Sharks. So all that and more on today's episode of Locked On Sharks.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast of your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, contributor at San Jose Hockey Now, and I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen, free and available wherever you get podcasts, and of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. We're proudly a part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. And if you want to be an everydayer, all you do, just got to come back tomorrow and check out our episode tomorrow where we're going to be talking about some potential free agents for the Sharks, realistic free agents. So, but before we get into that, we have Gregory Balloch on, who knows all things goalies. So he helps kind of get us a nice taste of a bunch of these different goalies in the draft and players that he likes and kind of how he stacks them up. And, you know, what are some of the ceilings of these players as the Sharks continue to try to solve their question about who is the goaltender of the future. So before, though, we get into our conversation with Gregory, do need to let you guys know about today's episode being brought to you guys by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. And now we have Gregory Balloch of EP Rinkside, Elite Prospects, all that. They have like 1,000 names for one website, but this is the guy when it comes to goalies. He's going to help us navigate all the goalies in the draft, all the top names in the draft. Gregory, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me on. I'm going to try to guide you through. I don't know if I'll be able to fully successfully, but I'll give it a shot.
I mean, we were talking beforehand. The Sharks' inability to draft and develop goalies is really, really interesting. So for a team right now there's talks that they might be taking a goalie very, very high, end of the first, beginning of the second round pick. Could be a very interesting prospect, because we know with any player, it's all about development, and we see how many players, of course, never live up to their potential because of development. So it's going to be fun to see what the Sharks do here. So I wanted to start with what a lot of people are considering the top goalie, Michael Hrabal, who plays for the Hrabal. He plays for the Omaha Lancers in the USHL. Had a really nice season for them in 31 games, 286 goals against, 908 save percentage, 3 shutouts. So, what makes him considerably the top goalie in this draft?
I don't know if I call him considerably the top. Like I honestly still think there's a bit of debate going on about who the exact top guy is, and Hrabal is definitely in the conversation for sure. He's a guy that's been talked about to go super high, and I'm sure as the draft works, with goalies it's a little tough to predict where they'll go and what order they'll go, because it kind of comes down to if a team likes a guy, they see a lot of potential in a guy, they'll go after him, right? So it's really tough to kind of get them in order when it comes to this time of the year, but he's definitely in the conversation for being one of the first pick goaltenders, and he's huge. He's just a massive guy. He's 6'6". He's got all the size in the world and all the strength in the world, and I think that's what really just makes scouts' eyes light up when they see him. Right? They see that frame and they see what he's able to do with it, and just how efficient he can be when he's on, and that really excites them. And I think that's that's a big thing for me. His skating still needs a bit of work, but that's, most goalies at this age still obviously need to work on that strength. And he's got a lot of it just simply because of his size, but the overall skating ability is the thing that kind of gives me a little bit of doubt, because there's never a guarantee that a goalie figures that out, right? That's a pretty important part of your game that you need to figure out, especially as a 6'6" guy, where you need to have that efficiency in your game. So, for me, there's still a little bit of question marks surrounding him, but he definitely showed really well this year, and he had a good season, and I think he's definitely in the conversation, like I said.
So you mentioned the skating. So if you could maybe talk to us like we're 5, right? So what does that mean for goalies? Because you're like, dude, you're going, 4 feet across or 6 feet across. Like, why does the skating? So what kind of break it down for us? What do you mean by that part?
Well, there's different aspects of skating for goalies, and you're right. A lot of it is sort of quick little movements around the crease. And he's good at that. And he takes away the lower portion of the net really well, which bigger goalies tend to do because they have the longer legs and ability to sort of splay out and just cover the lower portion of the net. But for him, where it becomes apparent that his skating needs some work is off the rush.
Okay.
So plays that come down off the wing, that come down, and he's so big. It almost looks like he just takes so long to get that backwards momentum going that he just doesn't have enough of it by the time that play reaches him. And that to me is just something that he really needs to work on, right? If there's going to be a quicker pace to the next level that he plays at,
yes,
that's something that's going to be, very honed in on by the shooters when they see that, right? They look at this guy off the rush. Look, he's way out of position. So I'm not saying he's like that now, but if he goes to the next level and he doesn't improve, that's the way it could end up. So I think that's the worst case scenario if you're looking at a guy like him, but like I said, not out of the question, right? Not every goalie can figure that aspect of their game out.
All right. And then with him, he's projected to go play for the University of Massachusetts. I don't know if it's next year or the next couple years. So what do you think with his development? We know goalies, right? Of course, they're on their own timeline. What do you think is a realistic kind of time for him to kind of turn professional and, start making an impact?
Well, with the college goalies, they're usually a bit of a work in progress, right? And I think that's the correct route for him. I think the logical next step for him to make a jump would be the college route. So yeah, he's still a few years away at the very least. And he's a guy that you want to work with for a couple of years for sure. Like I said, to iron out some of those little bit of issues that he has. And like I said, he pretty confidently, a lot of people say he wouldn't be able to play at the next level right now if he went professional, right? So, which he's not going to do, but now he's got that time. He's got a year or two to get stronger. He's got a year or two to get faster and just figure out that ability to move side to side using his size, right? And you look at guys that are just older and can play with their size effectively. They play a little deeper. They don't have as much room to cover because they're just further back in their net. But that takes time to figure out. That takes time for goalies to get repetitions and just work in game scenarios. And in college, he's going to get a lot of practice time. So you just work with your goalie coach and just do that you play maybe 1 or 2 games on the weekend a week and just make good on those opportunities because it's like I said, he's just a guy that needs to develop. He'll need a couple years in college to really figure out some of the major issues that he has.
All right. So if everything kind of at least works out for his ceiling and kind of everything, he hits all the beats for his development, where do you kind of project him being? Can he be a number one goalie, a 40-50 starter for an NHL team?
Yeah, like his skill set still excites me. Like he's got a lot of ability. He's got a lot of strength already as a younger guy, and his ability to get edges is another big one to me. Like that plays into the skating ability a bit. So like I said, around the net, he's really good at pushing back and forth and sealing the post. Just those little quick adjustments, which you don't see a lot of bigger goalies be really good at. So that's a really good sign in my eyes for making that jump to the next level. He could be a starter for sure. I see him as a guy that could be a number one goaltender in the NHL. But like I said, he's got those issues to hammer out first. But yeah, he's got the frame to be a guy that you can really rely on for a lot of games. You look at the Hellebuck mold, that kind of goalie that you could just throw out there 60 games a year and he can withstand that. But it's tough for those bigger goalies to do that, right? It's a lot of wear and tear on your body, and he's not going to get a lot of wear and tear in college, right? Like I said, it's a bit of a spaced out schedule. So it'll be interesting. He's a guy that you want to keep an eye on for sure and just see how he develops. But like I said, in my eyes, still a bit of a wild card in terms of those issues that he's had.
Yeah, and I mean, it's unless you're like one of those like dudes like Hellebuck or like you don't see guys playing 60 games a year anymore. And I think in today's NHL, you need to have a 1A 1B type of situation, unless you have one of those guys type of thing that you can throw out there, 60 games a year. So
yeah, it's load management, right? It's all the talk in sports right now. And with goalies, it's one of the toughest positions in sports, especially on your hips, which affect your groin, and it just all kind of trickles down from there. So bigger goalies have a tough time staying healthy. Like look at what happened to Robin Lehner. He's a 30-year-old man.
Yeah.
But his body's breaking down, right? Because it's tough to be that big and play the way that goalies play today.
Definitely not giggling about hips trickling down to the groin.
Yes, no, trust me, it's no joke for goalies, at least.
No joke for goalies. We can giggle about it because
Yeah.
if I tried to play goalie, I would literally explode on the spot. So, all right. Before we continue with Gregory, we talk about with a couple other goalies that are near the top, including Trey Augustine and Scott Ratzlaff, and kind of what their projectability looks like, and if both those guys playing behind really, really good teams, how difficult it is to kind of scout these guys. And is it the team that's making them look good, or are they just actually good? Do need to take a quick break. Talk to you guys about our good friends over at FanDuel. And you guys know the NBA Finals are here. Make a fast break to the FanDuel during the finals because right now new customers can get a no sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. The great thing about it, they have new promotions every day. They do some really fun game things, where it's like, can Joker get a combination of between points, blocks, and rebounds of like 50? With that, all those have to add up to 50. The app is super safe and secure. You get paid instantly. You don't have to wait for your winnings. There's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get a no sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Let's talk about some of the other guys who are kind of up there. So one of you, I know this guy you're pretty excited about, Trey Augustine. So Augustine in the USNDTP program, going to be playing at Michigan State, another one of those college guys. But in 33 games for the under 18 team this year, had 213 goals against, 926 save percentage. He's 6'1", 179, so a little bit smaller, but what makes him so exciting to you?
Well, for me, it's the technical base that he has. He's by far, in my eyes, the most polished skater of any of the goalies available in the draft this year. He's very patient on his edges, and what that means is, he's not going to go down and drop early. He's not going to start a slide early. He holds his edges, and then he's able to react if there's a pass left or right because he has access to both of his edges on the ice. And that's not a skill that you see in 18-year-olds very often. That's a kid who's been well trained and he knows how to play his position. And that's what excites me. The fact that he's been able to latch on and really grow the thinking side of his game the last year or so, because he's always had the skill set. And like I said, a great skater to be able to take that next jump. But for me, it's that stuff that I said. And then he also has this really good ability to just know where his net is.
Mm-hmm.
As a viewer, you never get the sense that he's out of position. You're scrambling. Like he never has. He's right back onto it. He's got a great ability to get right back onto his post. He's always hitting his spots where he's right back onto the post within the frame of the net. So he may be smaller than the average goaltender, but he uses the size that he has, right? He's so on point with the way he can retreat back to his post and get into his net. He's never out of the frame of the net. So he's never taking up space that he doesn't have to by being out of the net, right? You want to keep your body within the frame. And he's just so effective at that it's, it comes from his skating ability. Like I said, that ability to be in control. And for me, that's the biggest green flag out of any goalie that you want to see in the draft, right? That's, to me, that's saying, go, go, go. This is the guy that you want to get.
So you have him over Hrabal personally?
I do.
Okay.
Yes, I personally have him higher than Hrabal on my list, just because of those reasons. Like I said, the skating is just so clean that, to me, his floor, he's a successful professional goaltender at the base, right? And from where he goes from there, I think sky's the limit with Trey Augustine.
All right. With Augustine, right, we know the USNDTP program is pretty stacked with talent, right? They're going to have multiple forwards going probably in the top 15. Guys like Will Smith, Ryan Leonard, et cetera, et cetera. How much is it like because his team is really good that maybe makes his job a little bit easier? Or do you think it's just him? He's that good?
Personally, I think it's almost a detriment to him, right? Because he's not, you don't see him having to make, he's not bailing his team out all the time, right? So he's not going to jump off the page to those, scouts that may not be goalies that are just kind of, looking for something. He's not going to jump off the page at you for that, right? You need to look at the technical details of his game to really see why he has success. And like I said, for me, that's the green flag. When you see the reasons he's having success, he's an excellent skater. He's great positionally. He's got a smart hockey sense. He's patient as an 18-year-old goaltender, which you never see. All the boxes are checked in my eyes for him. Okay.
We talked about kind of this, the smaller goaltender versus a bigger, like with him, do you have to worry about as much as the kind of wear and tear as you do with a 6'6" goalie, or is it kind of negligible, I guess, would be over time?
Every goalie is going to have issues.
Yeah.
It's just sort of inevitable, like you said. It's not something that seems to be able to be avoided by goalies today. It's almost like Tommy John surgery with baseball pitchers, right? It's just a matter of when.
My 6-year-old, I just got him his Tommy John surgery to get ahead of the curve, right?
Yeah. Well, guys are actually doing that in goaltending, right? They are able to screen your hips for potential issues, and guys are going and get preemptive surgery to clean up all sorts of issues. Eric Comrie was one of them I can think of that did that. So it happens, and Eric Comrie's not a big goalie. He's 6'1" as well, right? So the wear and tear is a problem with every goalie. It's just it's a little bit more amplified when you have a 6'6", 270-pound goalie compared to a 6'1", 200-pound goalie.
Gotcha. And you kind of mentioned, right, his floor. You think he's going to be an NHL goalie. Again, where does he kind of flesh out, do you think, or it kind of ends up all said and done?
Honestly, like I would compare him to like a Carter Hart, Dustin Wolf in that sort of genre of a goaltender. Like
prospect, right?
He's right up there, right? Like he's, in terms of the style of play, at least, like in terms of the technical details that he has and his ability to skate, he's right there with those guys. So that, whether he gets to the Carter Hart level, we'll wait and see, but he certainly has the ability to do it in my eyes.
And we know Dustin Wolf from Gilroy, just south of San Jose, and having to watch Calgary, who's going to just stumble upon Dustin Wolf, is going to be amazing for them for the next 10 years. It's believe me,
he's a good one, and he was left off so many lists simply because of his size, and that tells you everything that's wrong with the way goalies are scouted today.
Liz, our good friend Liz Child, is I'm sure she is screaming right now as she's going to be listening to this. Just like, yes, please, small goalies.
I'm way more worried about whether a goalie can track a puck with his eyes than if he's 6'1" or 6'4". To me, that's the bigger fish to fry.
Can you do your job?
Yes. All right. Every goalie coach is confident that they could turn a guy into somebody, but I'd rather look for the green flags that they already have than what could potentially we could turn them into.
All right. I wanted to dig into another one of these guys here. So Scott Ratzlaff of the Seattle Thunderbirds. Seattle Thunderbirds, an absolute wagon of a team. He is 6'2", 172 pounds for the Thunderbirds this season. Played 34 games, 215 goals against average, 918 save percentage, 5 shutouts. Ratzlaff, again, it's kind of what we talked about before with his team is so good. What do you kind of take away from his game?
Almost the same scenario, right? Where it's just, how do you get a read on this guy? I talked to a lot of scouts that are like, I don't know what to make of this guy. Kind of like Dylan Ernst with Kamloops. It's like, is he good? His numbers are insane. Like, but you look at the guy and it's a tough subject. So for Ratzlaff, I'm a little more confident in him. I think he does have a lot of ability. He's a smart goaltender, which you almost need to be to play at his size. You can't make those mistakes as a smaller goaltender. The margin for error is so thin. And I think that's what scares a lot of people and scouts that watch is like, is he going to be able to keep it up with this razor thin margin for error every level that he goes? But I think he's smart enough to do it. And he's shown the ability to learn and develop because I watch him a lot out in the WHL. I cover the Giants out here in Vancouver. So I see him all the time. And, now he's a bit older and I think he's, like I said, he's got similar patience to what I was talking about with Augustine off the rush. He's not a lot of motion. It's kind of weird the way he plays it. Like he doesn't have a ton of depth off the rush. He doesn't come way out of the shooter. He kind of sticks around the top of his crease and just kind of hangs out there. And then as soon as the shooter's able to, or about to make a move, he kind of just juts out at them. It's like really quick sort of movements that he makes. So that's, it's an exciting way to watch a goalie play. He didn't have to bust it out all that often with the team that he played on, but I think he catches a lot of shooters by surprise just because it's like this stoic sort of character that you're coming down on and you don't know what to do. And then you go make a move and all of a sudden he's coming right at you. Right. So he plays these mind games, I feel like, off the rush that you don't see too often from goalies. So it shows me that he's thinking a little bit more than the average goalie. And whether or not he has the physical makeup and ability to be a professional goalie, I think is the biggest question mark for him. But when you come down to the details of his game, you're not going to find too many goaltenders that are better than Ratzlaff at what he does.
All right, before we finish up with Gregory, we talk about some of the overagers and if they're worth a swing in this year's draft, and kind of, some and very under the radar guy that he really likes. Do want to thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Again, we're proudly a part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. And if you want to be back to become an everydayer, just come back tomorrow. Going to be looking at some potential realistic free agents for the Sharks as Mike Grier continues to kind of churn this roster and try to get this thing going in the right direction. So just make sure you guys are following along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. All right. I wanted to kind of dig into some of the overagers, right? Because all the goalies we talked about are entering their first, their first round. Some of these guys have been passed over a couple of times, and it doesn't seem fair, at least. Yeah. So let's start with another Seattle Thunderbird, Thomas Milic, 20 years old, 6 foot, 174 pounds. Took the reins of the World Juniors and won gold for Team Canada. 33 games this year for the Seattle Thunderbirds. 208 save percentage. 208 goals against average. 928 save percentage. In the playoffs, he's played 19 games so far, 933 save percentage with less than 2 goals against average. Mm-hmm. We know, of course, he's an overager. Is it worth taking a swing on a guy who's done what he's done so far? Especially, I know he's again at the age of 20, but the resume speaks for itself.
Yeah. In my personal opinion, I'm not a huge fan of taking second, third year eligible guys. I feel like you need to pounce on guys early if you really like them. And sometimes you do, guys slip through the cracks and they end up having a great, second year eligibility and they get drafted. But, I'm more, I would rather let a guy develop in college a couple of years than sign him out of college than do that. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's riskier, right? Every team has the option to sign him at that point instead of just drafting him. But I'm never huge on taking that gamble. I'm not big on it. And I'm also not big on taking guys because you saw them at the World Juniors and they had a great tournament. That's not to say that's all Milic does. Like I said, he's another guy that I've seen a lot over the years. And but people tend to judge that tournament a little bit too much when it comes down to rating a goaltender and all prospects, but goalies especially, where you're seeing it right now in the NHL with Sergei Bobrovsky. He has a terrible season, then all of a sudden he just turns it on in the playoffs, and all of a sudden he's the best goalie in the world, right? So it happens sometimes with goalies when you get in a groove, and Milic was definitely in one at the World Juniors. So people saw him at his best, and testament to him. It's a tough tournament to do that in against tough opponents, but he's 20. He's a guy that's had experience. He's able to calm his nerves down. Hopefully by this point, he's not just some kid. So I give him credit for that, but I worry about what his ceiling is. I don't think he has that high end ability that you see at some of these guys that are 18 at their first year eligibility have in this draft class. It's not an overly good draft class, but I still think there are other guys, younger guys, that I would take before him, just as a project, because like I said, with Milic, yeah, there is potential he could turn into something. We saw what he could do with the good Team Canada in front of him. Seattle Thunderbirds obviously winning the championship this year. But like I said, when push comes to shove, I don't know if he has the next gear to be quick enough and to be technically refined enough to deal with a team in front of him that maybe doesn't protect the way he's been used to the last couple of years.
All right, well, here's another overage that you're going to probably crush. So not crush, but Tomáš Suchánek.
Yes.
So he had a huge coming out party again for Team Czechia at the under their World Juniors. And then for Tri-City Americans and WHL at 46 games, 305 goals against, 912 save percentage. is he, or is this kind of the same thing over again where, again, he performed his best under the bright lights?
He definitely did that. He certainly did that at the World Juniors. But I think he's the kind of guy that you're going to see those highs and lows with.
Okay.
Just simply because of the way that he plays. So you saw the highs at the World Juniors, and goalies that are like that tend to have those kind of moments on teams that are a little undermanned, and they step up, and because they have these great stretches where they just stop everything. And he's one of those guys. And the thing that excites me the most about him is his ability to use his hands. And he cuts every puck off with his hands. When plays are in tight, nothing can go over his shoulder because he's got such great hand discipline that he's able to keep his hands projected forward and out on top of the puck. So anything that tries to lift over, he just reaches out with the hands and is able to cut that puck off. And that's easier said than done, because as you get tired, as the game goes on, the first thing that happens to a goalie is their hands start to drop. Their hands start to go down to their side because they're getting tired.
Yep.
You don't see that with him. He's so disciplined at keeping his hand. So even when he's tired, he's got those hands out there and he's making saves with his glove and blocker because he just has great hand positioning. And that's not a trait that you can really teach to a lot of goaltenders. It's just something that he has that you love to see because it's so good on those plays that are in tight. The issue with Suchánek, though, is that he's just so aggressive a lot of the time. He makes these bizarre reads occasionally, and it works right now against WHL opponents, but when you get to the next level, you get guys that are 28, 29, 30 years old. They're not going to fall for that. They're not going to be scared by a goalie coming flying up. They're just going to wait you out, go around you and score. So my worry with him is that he gets to the next level. He just tries to push that gas pedal harder and everything's going quicker. So I got to be quicker. And that's basically the worst thing you can do for a goalie like that. You need to slow things down and beat plays on your feet rather than sliding around and do it. Like I could see him getting like that if things got too quick, but he does have great raw ability. Like I said, his hands, he's a good puck tracker. He's got all that. So I do think there's a good foundation, but like I said, his approach is going to need a lot of work. And anytime you need to massively overhaul a goalie's approach at the next level, it's a wild card. You don't know how they're going to react. You don't know how it's going to go.
And I don't trust the Sharks to be able to do that. Sorry, spoiler. I don't trust the Sharks to be able to do that. So they haven't proven me that they can. So, all right, Gregory, who are some names or who are some of the guys that under the radar that we could be like, wow, how did this guy kind of so?
I don't know if there's too many under the radar guys per se, but there's one in particular that I just love when I started scouting him this past year. He might be the first ever Italian-born player drafted in the NHL. He's gunning for that title. He's 6'6". His name's Damien Clara. He's playing out at Farjestad in the Swedish Elite League development program right now. He actually came up through the Red Bull Salzburg program in Austria. So he's got a weird development path to where he is now to go to Sweden all of a sudden. But like I said, he's 6'6". He's massive. But the thing with him that excites me is he can skate. Okay. And you don't see goalies that big that can skate the way that he does. He's super raw in pretty much every other aspect. But I think that might excite some teams. Like they'll see that frame, I think, and just get so excited in the first place. But to me, it's that combination of being able to skate and doing those quick little refined movements around the crease that is so tough for a bigger goalie because there's just so much going on, so many, so much movement with your limbs when you're that big. But he's able to keep it together and he's able to get there and beat passes on his, when a 6'6" goalie is able to beat a pass on his feet and get in front of a shooter, there's no visual space for them to shoot at with him. Like it's incredible. So I see a lot of potential in Damien Clara. I think he's definitely one of my under the radar picks for this draft. I don't think he's not in conversation really to be the first guy picked. He's definitely got some people in his corner that really like him, but I think he's getting overlooked by some people in this draft because, like I said, he's super raw in pretty much every aspect, but that skating ability is there, and you don't see the two combinations of the size and the skating like that come out very often.
All right, Gregory. Last question. Which goalie gets picked first? What got that?
Oh, that's always, like I said, it's always tough because there's teams that have guys that they like and they pick based off that rather than the central scouting list or anything like that. But man, for me, it's a toss up between Hrabal and Augustine. I think the development team program, the U.S. national development team has such a good reputation. and a lot of good connections. And I do think there's a lot of people pushing for Augustine to be the first goalie taken in this draft. I could definitely see a situation, not just because he's my top ranked guy that I want, but I think if the betting odds were out there, it's probably Hrabal that'll get the top ranked status going into the draft.
Does he go in the first round, or does he slip out of the first round?
Not likely. They're talking late second round for maybe the first goalie off the board. So like I said, not a great draft for goalies in terms of high end ability, but there's a lot of guys out there with interesting skill sets and abilities that might turn into something down the road. So you're not going to get the Vasilevsky or the Fleury way at the top of the draft. There just isn't that guy this year that stood out and took the reins. So, but like I said, don't shy away from picking a goalie because of that. There's certainly guys that are available.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the Sharks, you keep picking one until hopefully one pops for you because, yes, they're due at some point.
Well, my example I always showed you was look at New Jersey. Like, look at the stockpile they have with Schmid, Dawes, Blackwood's still there for now, and like they got so many guys throughout their. They got a couple guys in the dub that they've got. So it's just you take a whole bunch of guys with high ceilings, throw them to your development staff, hope they pan out. And just have confidence that your staff can mold them and talk to them and shape them into the goalies that you want them to be, because you just hope one of them turns out. All you need is there's one goalie spot that needs to be filled on your team, really. Yeah. So that's the way I would go about it.
Yeah, it's like a quarterback. Just keep picking until you get one. So,
but it's bizarre. There's teams out there that just totally don't do it, and they just try to sign guys. It's wild.
Again, if you can't develop them, you just try to sign them. So, Gregory, thank you so much. Where can the people find you?
Well, I'm on Twitter a lot with my goalie thoughts. So you can see my handle there at Greg Balloch, Balloch. I'm on EP Rinkside for the draft preview that comes out in a little while. It'll all the goalies there, all my opinions on the goalies for this year's draft, or at least the ones that are higher ranked in the draft. About 30 of them, I think I did reports for. So if you want to get your hands on that, I was really critical, I feel like, in this interview, but I'm not that critical usually in these articles. I try to focus on the positive sides of a lot of these goalies.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the guy on here to just crap on all over everyone, but it kind of turned out that way. But yeah, it's EP Rinkside is where you go for that. And then I do occasionally pop in at In Goal Magazine. If you guys want to go on there and read some previous articles that I've done for them. And then you can listen to me on Sportsnet 650. If you're in the Vancouver area, come on, listen in the mornings to Halford and Bruff. You can listen to my goalie takes on the air there if this was your thing.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Gregory. I strongly believe the Sharks will be drafting a goalie at some point. I don't know if maybe it's the top 3 picks, but I think they will be picking a goalie, maybe with that Carolina pick, maybe with one of their 4th round picks. You have to keep taking swings until you can find a guy. And especially with Ben Gaudreau, they're not signing him. We know Mason Beaupet had a terrible season last year. A lot of that maybe not his fault, but you got to keep taking swings until you can find a guy. And I think the Sharks will do that this draft in one of the middle rounds. So we shall see what happens. Again, the Sharks right now are really struggling to try to develop goalies. So hopefully you just keep picking one, and one will just overcome everything. But thank you guys for, again, making Locked On Sharks your first listen. We'll be back tomorrow to look at some potential free agents, realistic free agents for the Sharks. For Mike Grier, we kind of have a sense of what type of guys he wants. We know some of the holes the Sharks have, so we'll start looking at trying to fill some of those holes. So make sure you're following along wherever you get podcasts. You can watch on YouTube as well. If you haven't subscribed, please do. So the goal is to try to get to 2K by the draft. I think I'm like 250 subscriptions away right now. So make sure you guys are subscribing. Really want to hit 2K by the draft. So, and then follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. You can follow me on Twitter at MyFryHole. And until tomorrow, bye, friends.